Bernie Sanders and President Trump. So this is going to be a fun story.
This is good.
Liar Trump and crazy Bernie Sanders already in a fundraising battle for 2020. This is the showdown I think we were all denied during the 2016 election cycle.
We may yet still be denied it, but we're gonna fight for it.
So here, as we all know, the race for 2020 has begun. Bernie Sanders, when he made his announcement earlier this week, already in 24 hours raised more than $6 million, and the number is still going up. And now he's in a war of words with President Donald Trump. He called President Trump on the Vermont Public Radio a pathological liar. And he's also called Trump somebody who is easily terrified by his campaign's massive outreach and explosion. So this also shows that when President Trump made that statement during the State of the Union that the United States will never be a socialist country, Bernie Sanders is probably thinking, hold my beer, I'm about to go off on this. Because already Trump is now trying to send out all these emails out to a lot of his supporters or anyone who was part of his former mailing list that, no, we need to raise more money to stop Bernie Sanders from getting into the White House.
What did he raise in the first 24 hours?
What, President Trump or Bernie Sanders?
Bernie Sanders.
$6 million.
$6 million in 24 hours. And Trump's basically announced to his supporters like a counter campaign.
Yes.
Do we know how that turned out? Do we have any idea how much money he raised in that period of time?
It's not going as high as Bernie Sanders did.
I can't.
Well, because not to mention too, there's a lot of backlash from President Trump's recent policies. A lot of his supporters are really upset that he's continuing.
There's been backlash to every Trump policy. Of
course there is. But to some of his supporters who are perhaps anti-interventionist, they're really upset of his involvement in Syria, Venezuela, as well as a few other issues. And I don't think Trump has the same kind of momentum. Now, it's not. Let's be fair. Don't underestimate President Trump, because a lot of people did that during the 2016 election cycle, and everyone had a media meltdown. So it's quite clear that President Trump is really taking Bernie Sanders very serious, and I think he's the one person that he'd be afraid to go on a debate stage with. Earlier this week, though, the article also points out that Trump told reporters in the Oval Office that he does like Bernie Sanders and wishes him well. Trump also said that he believes Sanders was taken advantage of, which is a very rare moment where you hear President Trump take.
No, but he spoke that way during 2016.
And he was not treated with respect. But he also went on to say that he doesn't really. He calls him crazy. And in the tweet following the next day, Bernie Sanders jabbed at him right back. What is crazy is that we have a president who is racist, sexist, a xenophobe, and a fraud. We are going to bring people together and not only defeat Trump, but transform the economic and political life of this country. Say that you're in. So that was President Trump, or Bernie Sanders, acknowledging Trump's tweet where he said, "Crazy Bernie has entered the race. I wish him well." So I would really like to see a debate between these two in the general election. But first, we got to get out and vote during the primary, because as we've said before, primaries are key. Already we're seeing the media blitz around Bernie Sanders. We're seeing corporate media trying to portray him as something else. They're going to do their attacks, but a lot of people are rallying around Bernie Sanders, and I hope that there's a much larger involvement during the primary, especially the Democratic primary, so that more people actually get involved and actually vote for the strongest primary candidate, which at this point is Bernie Sanders. He has the momentum. He has a coalition. There's a lot of people from various backgrounds and political points of view that really like Bernie Sanders' message, including conservatives, independents, libertarians, and socialists. But it's interesting to see these two finally go at it. And
we got little glimpses of it in 2016, and this is very much the same. Trump used the fact that Bernie was cheated in the Democratic primary,
which is a fact,
but he used that sort of to smear Hillary, and I think he was right to do so. I think he is able to look at that for his own political advantage, and that's sort of the off-the-cuff comment you got on the day that Bernie announced in the Oval Office. It was a reporter asking Trump, that's where you got the quote from, where he's like, oh, he's a nice guy, he wasn't respected in 2016. And then that evening when he got to the Twitter machine, he's like, okay, well, now we gotta help fundraise this socialist. And that's the odd framing that you'll get, the weird arguments that you'll get out of right-wingers and the Trump camp fall flat because they're ridiculous and out of left field and factually inaccurate.
Yeah.
Which is why that would be a fun fight to watch. But the big hurdle, right? The big obstacle is getting over the DNC, getting the DNC nomination for someone like Bernie or someone like Tulsi.
Yeah, and the thing is, look, we've covered this before. We've done some fair coverage of Tulsi Gabbard, and we're going to do the same thing for Bernie Sanders because we're noticing that the media bias against Bernie Sanders and
it's
Tulsi
palpable.
Gabbard, it's disgusting to really see them really portray these candidates as something that they are not. So, you know, I saw in the comment below that there's a lot of people have finally caught on to the corporate media and the lies. Well, that is true, but not a lot of people are really paying attention to the political system that we have, and it's really up to all of us to really inform people and actually have some real discourse and talk about this 2020 presidential election cycle and really the consequences and repercussions if people don't get out and vote during the primaries. And it's also very important to note that we really need to keep an eye out on how many polling stations are going to be open, whether the election machines are going to work right, whether there's going to be enough ballots, whether or not the DNC is actually going to really support one of their establishment candidates and do the same thing that they did for Hillary Clinton. Now, Daniel has mentioned that people like Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, they don't have the same kind of gravitas like Hillary Clinton had. Let's face it, the Clintons and the Obamas and a few others have a lot of control and power over the Democratic Party, but that power has waned. They're nothing more than a paper wall that's guarded right behind it with a paper tiger. We can really make an impact already with this first story that we covered, where Andrew Cuomo is willing to put in this ridiculous law saying that grassroots activists should now register as lobbyists. They are afraid of people, and they're afraid of the power of activists. They're afraid of an active voter populace. And here President Trump is really afraid of Senator Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders has a large momentum. He can get people together. Now, of course, we're all not going to agree on every single issue. That's a fantasy world that we're all living in. Not all of us are going to agree. There's always going to be disagreements. But Bernie Sanders is able to build a very strong coalition. And the reason why he has that strong coalition, especially the reason why his campaign in 24 hours got $6 million.
Because he's been walking the walk for 40 years.
And not only that, but he's been really making a huge impact these past 4 years, from the after the general election in 2016, during the midterm primary, and now.
He's been active and engaged. And we can look at what he's done even just recently and be like, yes, that thing, that's good.
Yeah, he has a history. And so when the corporate media or even at the neoliberal establishment and neoconservative establishment want to attack Bernie Sanders, they don't have the same kind of power that they did. Now, let's not underestimate them, because the Democratic establishment would rather lose to Trump than have somebody like Bernie Sanders in office, or they would rather lose to Trump and rather have someone like Tulsi Gabbard in office because they are afraid of that message. And I'm just going to say this right now. For the debate stage, all the candidates should be up there. We're going to say that every single Democratic candidate should be on the debate stage, from Bernie Sanders to Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren, you name it, so that the people can see the difference between the candidates and also get a real clear message on how we are going to build a strong economic political system that's finally held accountable. Because if we revert back to neoliberalism, we're going to get another Trump. And worse, somebody that's probably more competent.
So I have to say this, given that this is the only story in this hour we're talking about the 2020 race, and you did mention the debates. One of the interesting metrics for getting on the debate stage is not the amount of money that you've raised, but the number of contributions you've got, the number of individual donations. To that end, I think it behooves us to go ahead and chip in for Bernie Sanders. He's definitely going to make that threshold, but also Tulsi Gabbard. Like, chuck $5 toward her campaign to make sure she gets enough individual contributions to end up on that debate stage. Because if we don't have both Tulsi and Bernie on that stage, it's going to be hard to pull the conversation in that direction.
Yeah,
I want to absolutely make sure I see both of them on that stage.
My own personal opinion, and I'm going to quote Nico House, Tim Black, Jimmy Dore, and a few others too, and even we've said it here too, the winning ticket is a Bernie Sanders Tulsi Gabbard, or Tulsi Gabbard Bernie Sanders, however which way it goes, but they should all of them should be on that debate stage. And this is only the beginning.
Bernie asks, Fitness and Bodybuilding asks, what about Yang? Yang is blatantly running for the vice presidency. I'm not really worried about Yang. He says some nice things, but come on, like.
But he should be on a debate stage nonetheless.
I want to hear from him,
so that we can properly vet our candidates, because we want to be critical of them. But look at how corporate media is portraying all the candidates. There's clear favoritism for Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, whereas when you look at Bernie Sanders, who is the strongest, and then Tulsi Gabbard, they constantly get smeared by the establishment media. So one more final note too. this is where we have to get involved. This is where we have to step up and actually talk to our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers about the 2020 primaries, specifically the primaries. That's what matters, because that's how we pick the strongest candidate. And one last note, too. This verbal exchange between President Trump and Senator Bernie Sanders, it's only the beginning. And it's going to be an interesting show. And I hope,
the nights are coming out. It's going to be fun.
Personally, the general election, I hope it is a Sanders-Trump race where we actually see these two finally debate and actually see a race and clash between two different ideas.
That would be beautiful to see.
It would be good.
That'd be amazing.
It would be epic social media and television event.
Man. If you like what you just saw, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, make sure to hit that bell icon and give it a thumbs up.
Help us build a better future, and also really help build a strong independent media network here in the city of Chicago. Let's upset the neoliberal establishment.